Well now, boys and girls, this is a very, very different video. I don't normally get involved, but this is such a hot topic at the moment that I thought I should comment for some of our international friends here. This is going to be a lot of information, but hopefully you'll find this useful. First of all, yes, the UK is an absolute mess right now. Protesters are out in the hundreds of thousands now, particularly in London. The country's broke. The Labour government rules with authority despite only 31% of the population actually voting for them. We've got more CCTV cameras than most of the planet, and yet crime is absolutely rampant. Free speech is basically dead. The government have lowered the voting age to 16 without any debate or discussion. No one had any choice, so they get more votes now. And yet they've cancelled or delayed local elections where they would likely lose. We have a new Online Safety Act, which can censor any website, and we've got basically 12,000 people a year get arrested for social media posts or for online offences. So, for example, I can't post freely my opinion. Our Prime Minister Keir Starmer has a Facebook page, and he posts some right garbage on there. But I can't actually comment what my real opinion is for fear of reprisal. Free speech is basically dead. We've got tax changes which are driving wealthy people out of the country. There's a chart, I'll put it on here, where it basically shows that the UK is the worst on the planet right now for driving people out of the country, and most of it comes down to tax changes and some rules about what visas are going to put on. And by the way, I'm dismantling these two differentials today because I need to count how many teeth basically are on them, because I've no idea what they are. They're off a Subaru drift car. We've got protests happening up and down the country in towns and cities at the moment, and mostly it's about illegal migration coming into the UK. People are chanting, stop the boats and send them home, and it's happening all over Europe at the moment. And that's what the media shows us. That's what it fixates on. And yet, illegal migration is not the main problem for the UK, and I'll explain why in this video. It's about 0.5% of our annual costs. And look, I should know, Glasgow's my nearest city, and we have more migrants being housed in hotels. The government pays for hotels, and we've got more than anyone else. We've got about 4,000 in the city at the moment. And I cannot get this. I can't figure out why I can't get this diff breather off. Ow! Right, it's a push fit. Right there, that's been removed. There's currently foreign nationals have about 10% of the social housing in England, so that would be free housing basically. If you get into a desperate situation, the government has a limited number of houses that they can provide to help people in desperate situations. It's a great idea. And the problem isn't for me that we've got 400,000 people who are foreign nationals in those houses. The problem is that we've got 4 million people that can't afford a house because the UK is broke. We're broke. About 25% of working age people in this country get some sort of government benefit to support their income, and 10% of people don't work at all. The UK is absolutely broke. We've got a national debt which is almost at £3 trillion now. In the history of our country, we have never had such a high amount of debt, and it's getting harder and harder to find people to borrow from. It used to be really easy to get, Japan or China to invest in our country and buy government bonds. That's slowing down because people don't want our money because the country is broke. No one wants to fund the government. The majority of that 3 trillion comes in 5 big chunks that you can think about. And this is where I'll start to break down the real problem that we have in the UK. For those that are still here and still interested anyway. I've managed to get this diff off, by the way. I need to count the teeth now. Actually, I'll do the other one. I'll do my counting once I've got both differentials off. The majority of our national debt is in 5 big chunks that you can think about. Nice, neat, even chunks. The top 5. The first one is crisis borrowing for COVID and for the 2008 financial crisis. So yes, we haven't yet paid off the 2008 financial crisis. There's about £900 billion in crisis borrowing. Some of those decisions were really stupid as well, like 100 billion in loans that we still aren't collecting back from businesses because the businesses went bankrupt and they had the money anyway. The NHS is a huge one. The National Health Service in the UK is a big, emotive, political topic for people, but we've got £600 billion of our national debt because the NHS never balances its budget. It goes into debt every year, and that goes into our national debt. £600 billion. The scariest one, for me, is unpaid interest on debts. We've got £500 billion probably in our national debt, which is just interest. We've kicked the can down the road because we can't pay our bills. £500 billion of not paying off our debts. It's no wonder people don't want to loan any more money to us. Our pensions contribute about £400 billion to the national debt, and the welfare system, providing sickness benefits for people or disability living allowances, that sort of thing, that's about £300 billion. Debt from financial crisis, debt because we didn't pay the debt, and debt because of the NHS, which is just a tragic dream, which is dead as far as I'm concerned. So meanwhile, the asylum system is costing about 50 billion of our national debt. That's probably how much is left in there from unpaid bills. About 50 billion, as best as you can estimate it. But that said, the cost of running our government for a year is maybe about 70 billion. So it's still, that's, MPs and researchers and teams. So it's probably not far off. It's still a problem, but crisis debt and economic fallout is the main reason that the UK is in such dire straits. It's not the migrants. Now, inflation is also a big problem, and our government blatantly just cheat the inflation data. It's just something that they do time and time and time again. We used to use a thing called RPI, which is the Retail Price Index, which over the last 5 years, and by the way, they talk about an annual number. They say, inflation's 3%. That would be something that costs you 100 quid today is going to be 103 quid in a year's time. But they don't talk about the cumulative effect. So over the last 5 years, the retail price index, if we still used that, but no, they've gotten rid of it, retail price index would be about 28% inflation. But the problem is, they've decided now to start removing things from the retail price index in order to make the number look better. So for example, food inflation over the last 5 years is nearly 40%. So they just take it out. Energy inflation, so that would be cost of fuel or gas or heating your house, that's nearly 70%. So they just take it out. Or something as normal as, the costs of maintaining your home. They just took that out because it was making the numbers worse. So we now have this metric called core CPI inflation, which excludes a whole bunch of things which are making the numbers worse. And so now we have core CPI, which is 21%, instead of talking about the big problems like 70% energy inflation. And it's just a way the government is just dishonest about the problems that we have, and the media just keeps blaming the migrants. And it's not the migrants. But the government doesn't have enough money. Oh God, I'm going to make a horrible mess here. Let me just see if I can... Well, it's too late now. I'm going to throw this towel down, and I'm going to have to throw this lot in the bin, I think. Oh my God, what a mess. Oh no, it's the cat pee smell of diff oil. Thanks, Dad, for the sheets. They're still getting lots of good use. What I need here is actually a tray. This is bad news. I need a tray. And this diff has way, way more oil in it than I thought it did, so that's going to cause me a problem. Let me just... Yuck. All I wanted to do was count the teeth, and now I've got a mess to clear up. So they're cheating the inflation data. But the government doesn't have enough money, so what can they do except cheat? The annual income for the UK is about 1.2 trillion, that's like taxes and revenues and so on. But our spending is always a little bit higher than our taxes. And that's why they're not paying off the national debt. Because they can't. They're now taking loans to pay off the previous loans. If I did that, I'd lose my house. So let's again do the top 5 chunks of what the UK's spending goes on and why we can't pay down the national debt. And this is when we start to see where the problem really is. 15% of our annual budget goes on the NHS. The National Health Service takes up 15% of our budget, and it provides an appalling service, which I'll go into shortly. But We basically underperform the developed world for a national health service, despite it being bloated and expensive. The biggest thing in our annual budget is the NHS. Next is 14% that goes on welfare. Talked a little bit about that before. 10% to pay the pensions to people who are currently old enough to draw a pension. 9% goes on education. And 8% of our annual income goes on the debt interest alone. And we're still not paying it down. And again, people are fixated on the asylum system, people are fixated on migrants, but they only cost about 0.5% of our annual budget, about 5 billion quid. And that includes the hotels and all the rest, and the taxis to take them back and forward to NHS appointments. That's about 5 billion a year. So the NHS is the biggest financial drain here, and it's absolutely horrible to use. The waiting lists are double what they were in 2019. 40% of people wait more than 4 hours to get seen at the hospital. Like, they go to what you call the emergency room in the US. More than 4 hours to see someone. That's more than 40% of people. In the UK, avoidable deaths, that's a metric where it's basically like they're killing people, or they're killing people with mistakes, or they don't see them fast enough and they die in the emergency room. We're far worse than countries like France and Germany. Cancer, survival rates for cancer in UK are consistently the worst in Europe on every measure. Deaths, waiting times, cancers, the NHS is falling behind our peers. Every year we overspend on our budget, and it isn't getting any better. It's the biggest drain on our economy, and it's not working. Let me give you an example of that. I need a pen and paper for this next bit. So if you call my doctor here in Scotland, you join a queue with hundreds of people who are on the phone. Now, their system is that they give out a limited number of appointments for emergencies. So like if you've got something critical and it's like somewhere between I'm dying and I have to go to hospital and I could wait and get an appointment when you need me. They've gotten rid of the see me when you see me appointments. You can either get an emergency appointment on the day, and when they're gone, they're gone. Anything else, you have to go to hospital and wait. And then they give appointments away for 1 week ahead. So if today is Thursday, they will give out, say, 10 appointments on a Thursday, and when they're gone, they're gone. So it's first come, first serve, a fight to get through on the phone in the morning, and 1 week from then, if there are 11 people that are sick and there are only 10 appointments, too bad. The 11th person has to go to hospital, or they have to try and phone tomorrow if it's maybe not bad enough for them to go to hospital. And then once they go to hospital, it's full of sick people, and you have to wait, 12-hour waits are common now, never mind the 4-hour waits. And the service is really dreadful. So for example, I needed crutches, and so I went to the hospital because I'd torn the ligaments in my ankle. I needed crutches, to be told, you'll have to buy crutches from Amazon because we don't give them out anymore. So now, I've got a medical supply cupboard upstairs because I know that if I go to hospital for a broken foot or something, they're not going to help me anyway because they don't do that anymore. I have to sort myself out. This is where you see videos in America of people pulling their teeth out with pliers, and this is how you get there. And this is worse now because I now have children. I've got 2 boys, one is 3 months old and one is just turned 4. And my 4-year-old needs a hearing test. And it's a 1-year wait for him to get a hearing test. He's on the waiting list for a speech assessment. It is a 4-year wait for a speech assessment. So if it turns out that he does have a hearing problem, or if he does need some sort of speech therapy or coaching, he won't be an infant anymore. He will be a child most of the way through his primary school education. He will have been disrupting learning for all the other kids for 4 years already by the time the NHS has seen them. And so what do I have to do? I have to pay private. I'll have to find a consultant in Glasgow who will take £400 from me to jump the queue. And then if he needs, I don't know, let's say he needs surgery or something like that on his ear, another £2,000. I just have to find that money, or people have to take out a loan, or they have to sell their car. The system of the NHS is fucked, and it is nearly a quarter of our national debt. The system is not working, and yet it's dragging the whole country down. And the government is planning to raise taxes again for people that can't flee the country, as I mentioned earlier on. So the Labour government believes that we can afford it. One example of that might be car ownership. So if your household has 2 cars, they believe you could survive on 1 car. You have to sell the other one, and the government can tax the difference by increasing your income tax. You should have 1 car, not 2. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Oh, it's marked on the side. I don't have to count the teeth. It says here 37.9. Oh, and that is welded. Super duper welded. Where's my diff back plate? Oh, there it is. Right, what was I talking about? And this has become a bit of a rant now. Alright, so our government would very much like to take your second car away. What else would they do? They might want to squeeze the existing taxes. They've got lots of little clever techniques to force more people into paying more tax. We've got a car tax system here in the UK called the luxury car tax. Now, you'd think that's maybe, Lamborghinis and Porsches, but it's not. If your car costs over £40,000 here in the UK, you pay an extra £425 a year on your car tax. And that includes EVs. And more than 70% of electric vehicles are in that bracket. So if you buy a fairly normal Kia or a bottom-end Tesla, you're going to be spending more than that, and you're in the luxury car tax bracket, and you're spending that extra £425 a year. They've also changed the law so that in the future you will have no choice but to buy an electric car. They've banned the sale of internal combustion vehicles from 2035. I think they've kicked the can down the road because it was basically impossible for any of the manufacturers to do it in 2030. So they kicked it back. But what they've done is they've changed the law so that more people will be forced into this luxury car tax bracket because you're just buying an EV because you've got no choice. Normal people aren't buying luxury cars. That's just how much normal cars cost now. So if you're buying a luxury car, even though you don't really want an EV, the government believes that you can afford to pay more tax now, and they're changing the law to facilitate that. And while I'm on the topic, by the way, the UK government pays for cars as part of the welfare system that I talked about earlier on. There's a scheme called Motability, and now 1 in 5 cars sold in the UK are on that scheme. So 20% of the vehicles that we sell in the UK are paid for by the government. So that's about 250,000 cars sold, which props up the car market. Now, it's only for a small subset of people who have to pass disability assessment, but that's 250,000 cars that are being sold to the government, and it props up the car market. And the government can decide, well, this year we're going to give the cars to Nissan, and next year it's going to be Toyota's turn. And by the way, now MG over in China are cutting us a good deal, so now we're going to buy all Chinese cars. You could see how that would be a problem. But the question is, what could be done? And sometimes it feels like there's nothing that can be done. So let's say Paul gets put into power and now I have decisions to make about how to fix the economy. I think the big one is probably the NHS. It's absolutely fucked anyway, right? And we're getting more and more into debt every year to keep it alive. I don't think it can be saved. Based on my experience of using it, I do not think it can be saved. People are super sensitive about any discussion about changing the NHS, privatising it, outsourcing it. Anything involving money in the NHS, and people go, oh, you want to scrap our NHS. Yeah, I probably would if I was in power. I'd just abolish the whole lot and we'll find a better system. Obesity, for example, costs the NHS over £6 billion a year. I would tax the shit out of those people. In the same way that smokers pay loads of tax on their cigarettes and drinkers spend lots on their alcohol, I would put sin taxes. I would go wild on sin taxes for smokers and drinkers and people who just don't help themselves. The other thing is welfare. If welfare, what did I say, 14%? If welfare is 14% of the annual budget, that has to be massacred. We have to be tighter on who is eligible to get the money from the government. The UK has the longest tax code in the entire world, and so there's massive bureaucracy in government about how to organise who pays what tax and when they due. I'd simplify that to reduce costs. I would also want to completely cut off international aid and give the UK a chance to get back on its feet. We're giving away billions of pounds a year to other countries, and yet we're not able to balance our own books. That just seems like madness. I'd want us to sort our own country out first. So there's actually a lot we could do, but none of it's friendly. None of it's particularly palatable. But the UK is heading for a financial doom loop at this point if we don't sort ourselves out. We are on a path for emergency budgets, inflation for the pound sterling, and everyone will suffer. And I'm really just scratching the surface here. This video is probably 30 minutes already, and I'm really just scratching the surface here. All of this is just my opinion, of course. I hope that I'm wrong, and maybe the UK will win the lottery, or maybe I'll just win the lottery, and then, you know, I can spend money on 74 weld portals for the Land Cruiser. It's that thing where, you know, if you win the lottery, you shouldn't tell anyone, but there will be clues. I'll be doing my differentials in Armani. I mean, I'm just a normal guy. I've got an office job, I've got a small family, I don't have lavish holidays or expensive hobbies, and that's my opinion on what's going on in the UK. Yes, I'm more informed than most because I work in a finance-related job, and so this numbers stuff comes a bit more naturally to me. So that's what's happening in the UK. The country's pretty much heading for an IMF bailout. We are heading for financial doom. And there's very little that us normal people can do about it. And so people are lashing out and blaming migrants, and the media feeds that to them, and it distracts them from the real economic problems that this country has. And there's very little that we can do about it. Now, this is a fairly depressing end to this video because I don't actually have a solution other than, you know, get your money out of the UK economy if you can. Or you could do what our current government does and just bury your head in the sand, or you can do what the members of the public are doing and blame migration. But hopefully you will see from this video why I genuinely believe migration is not the problem. It is a economic situation in the UK and poor financial decision making over decades. That's what's got us into this problem. Now, well done if you made it to the end of this video, because this is not my normal style of video. I just wanted to give the opinion of a normal person living in the UK and let you know what's really going on here. We don't have free speech the way we used to. We don't have NHS the way we used to. The pound sterling is not the strong economy that it once was, and there's very little that we can do about it because there is no government which is providing a solution to this problem. I know we've got people viewing from all over the world, and I'm really fortunate to have you all joining me. This is a bit of a rant, but I want you to see just from a normal person what it's like to be in the UK at the moment, and there is a general sense of doom and gloom and pessimism. There's no government coming which can fix this problem, and so people are just largely just waiting for collapse or civil war, or I don't know. But there's not much that you can do. You just have to wait and try and save up some money for emergencies and try and look after your family and do the best you can. Life continues even if we are heading for economic collapse. Hopefully we're not ending up for civil war though. Right, I'm going to call it quits here. I'm going to finish this diff off the camera so I can concentrate. If you have any thoughts on the things that I've said, please do let me know how you're feeling in the comments. Particularly if you're in the UK, like, am I on my own here? Like, it feels like I'm a normal person, but I can see problems coming. I'm not a radical or, you know, someone who's posting crazy conspiracy theories on the internet. I feel like I'm just a normal guy, and I'm feeling this way, and I'm wondering if there are other people in the UK who are just normal and who feel this way. So thank you for listening to my rant. If you made it this long into the video, I appreciate that. Normal service will be resumed very soon, I'm sure. In fact, I've got more videos about the aircon disaster and some of my other diagnosis. I've been trying to fix my electric seats, so I'm going to talk about that shortly. Thank you for any of you who have listened this far into my UK economy chat. But basically, we're broke, and many of our public systems need major overhaul in order to survive, because this country just cannot live on debt forever. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what we can do about it. I'm trying not to comment on the political party situation because, you know, it just gets people upset. Let me know how you feel in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for watching. Stay safe. Please stay safe. Make good decisions if you can. I'll see you in another video very soon. Thank you for watching, everyone. You take care. Bye.